This poor widow gave her last savings to a starving orphan. What happened years later will break your heart and restore your faith in humanity.
Welcome to our channel, Story Lovers. We love having you here. Before we continue with this intriguing story, please subscribe and turn on notification bell so you can get notified whenever we drop new stories. Now enjoy.
The rain had started quietly, as it always did in the evenings, tapping gently on the rusted zinc roof of Mama Ruth's small house. By nightfall, the sky opened fully, sending thick ropes of rain down over the sleepy town of Obanagu. People rushed to close their windows and pull their children inside. Mama Ruth, on the other hand, stayed at her corner by the roadside, her old umbrella tied to a crooked stick stuck in the wet sand beside her roasting table. She turned her roasted corn carefully, flipping the cobs over the charcoal, her bare feet pressing into the wet ground. The smoke rose lazily into the air, mixing with the smell of rain and burnt plantain. Customers had stopped coming hours ago, but she remained, as she always did, hoping one last person might stop by. Even one cob sold tonight would help buy matches and kerosene for the next morning. She was just about to pack up when she noticed movement across the road. There, under the broken wooden shed near the abandoned kiosk, was a small figure. It was hard to see clearly through the curtain of rain, but she could make out a thin boy, soaked from head to toe, hugging his knees and shivering. Mama Ruth didn't hesitate. She left her tray, picked up her lantern, and crossed the road barefoot, the mud clinging to her wrapper. "Hey, you," she called softly. "UWAND here." The boy looked up slowly. His eyes were too large for his face, and his lips trembled from cold and fear. He didn't answer. He just stared. "Come," she said again. "Rain no be your friend this night." He hesitated, then stood, wobbling slightly as if he hadn't eaten in days. He followed her back to her roasting spot. She gave him a stool, wrapped one of her old shawls around his shoulders, and handed him a half-roasted plantain. He didn't even say thank you. He just ate like someone fighting a war with his stomach. "What's your name?" she asked when he was halfway through. "David," he said without looking up. "Where your mama and papa?" "They are gone." She nodded slowly. "And you come from where?" "Lagos. I ran away. My uncle beats me. Says I stole his money. But I didn't." He wiped his nose with the back of his hand. Mama Ruth said nothing for a while. She just watched him, the way his shoulders curled in, the way his eyes darted around like he expected to be chased. "You no get anybody here." He shook his head. She looked at the last 3 cobs of corn on her tray. She'd planned to eat one, and sell the rest tomorrow. But somehow, those thoughts began to feel small. Useless, even. "Okay," she said finally, standing up. "Carry the tray. Let's go." David looked at her, confused. "Go where?" "My house. Or you prefer under that shed?" He stood up quickly. The corn tray balanced on his small hands like it was made of feathers. That night, Mama Ruth made the only gari she had left. She gave David the soft middle part of her mattress while she lay by the door on a mat filled with holes. When the zinc roof began to sing its sad song in the middle of the night, she turned her face to the wall and whispered, not to David, but maybe to her dead husband or God above. "Na this kind thing we kill person with joy and hunger at the same time." And yet, she smiled in the dark. Not because life had suddenly changed, but because, for the first time in years, her house was no longer quiet. Mornings in Obanagu were slow and soft, with the sound of cockcrows stretching across the hills like a warning bell for the poor. Mama Ruth always rose before the sun, tying her faded wrapper and wrapping a scarf over her gray hair, careful not to wake David, who now slept like a baby after too much play. But as weeks turned to months, David no longer slept through the morning. He was the one who fetched the water from the nearby stream. He swept the compound with fresh palm fronds. He even learned how to roast corn without burning the tips. "Not like that," Mama Ruth would say, smacking the back of his head lightly. Turn it like you're handling an egg, not firewood. Sorry, Mama, he would laugh, his hands steady but his smile crooked. People started to notice. At the market, Mama Ruth no longer sat alone behind her wooden tray. David was beside her, calling customers, cracking jokes, and balancing roasted plantain with one hand. They were a team, surviving one hot day at a time. "He day sweet her now," one of the women whispered one afternoon. "But when the boy go thief her dry, make she no cry come our side." Another said, "He be like pickpocket. I no trust that one." Mama Ruth heard them all. She didn't argue. She just kept roasting, her back straight, her eyes forward. "People no go mind their own dirty house," she told David once as they walked home in silence. He only nodded, his small fingers curling into fists. But he never asked to leave. Not even when they had to sleep on soaked mats during heavy rain or when dinner was dry gary and groundnuts. One morning, as the sun crawled across the sky, Mama Ruth didn't get up. David thought she was joking. He laughed and poured cold water into a bowl, planning to tease her awake. But she didn't move. Her breathing was loud and shaky, like an old engine refusing to start. Her eyes barely opened. "Mama," he whispered, shaking her gently. "Get up. The corn go burn today if you no roast 'em." She turned her face slowly and tried to speak. But only a whisper came out. David ran. He ran from compound to compound, house to house, knocking on gates and shouting through windows. "Please, help me. My mama is sick. She can't move." Some ignored him. Some peeped through their curtains and told him to come back later. One woman even hissed. "Go and call her family," she said. "You be who to her, Seth." When he returned, drenched in sweat and tears, Mama Ruth was still in bed. Her breathing had grown softer. Too soft. That evening, she called him close. Her voice was weak, but her eyes were sharp. "Inside that blue keg behind the door, bottom of the rice sack. Bring it." He did. She pulled out a black nylon tied with 3 knots. Inside was a bundle of old notes, wrapped in plastic to keep out rats and dust. "Naira," she said, smiling faintly. 200,000. David blinked. "You get this kind money?" She laughed, the sound like dry leaves in Harmattan. "For freezer. For expansion. For better tomorrow. But my tomorrow no day again." She pressed the money into his hands. "Go, David. Go far. Go to the city. Use 'em to start again. Learn work. Go school. Hustle. Just no die in this village. This place no good for dreamers." His mouth trembled. "I can't leave you." "You must. You no be my blood, but God use you hold my bones for 10 years. I don't try. Now na your turn." David cried. Not the loud kind. The kind that came out of his nose and soaked the front of his shirt. He knelt and rested his head on her chest, listening to her heartbeat like it was a song he was afraid to forget. "I go come back," he said. "I swear. When I become somebody, I go come carry you." She nodded. The next morning, before the sun had opened its eyes, he left with nothing but a nylon bag and the money wrapped in his socks. Mama Ruth sat in front of her house for weeks. Each bus that passed, she watched. Each letter that arrived at the market, she checked. But nothing came. A year passed. Then 2. Then 5. People stopped asking about the boy. Even the gossipers got tired. But Mama Ruth never stopped waiting. 10 years later, her bench was still in the same place. Her corn tray smaller. Her eyesight weaker. But each time the wind blew, she whispered to herself, "One day, he go come." The sun was particularly harsh that afternoon, the kind that made even the clouds look tired. Mama Ruth sat under her faded umbrella, gently fanning her face with an old magazine, her corn roasting slowly over the low fire. Her back ached more now, and she couldn't see well out of her left eye. The children who used to tease her now ran past like she was invisible. Obanagu was no longer the sleepy village it used to be. There were tarred roads now. A new petrol station. Fancy shops with tinted windows. People spoke more English than Igbo these days, and everyone had phones that lit up their faces like torches. But Mama Ruth stayed the same. Same corner. Same corn. Same life. Until that day. A sleek black SUV with shiny silver rims pulled up near her shed. Not the type of car you see in Obanagu. Certainly not the type that stops for roasted corn. Mama Ruth didn't look up. Rich people didn't buy from her. They usually rolled their windows up and zoomed off, pretending not to see the smoke from her firewood. But this one didn't drive off. The door opened, and a tall young man stepped out. His shoes looked expensive enough to pay someone's rent. He wore a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled up, and his wristwatch flashed each time he moved. A camera crew followed behind him, 3 people with microphones, wires, and a banner that read, "The David Ease Foundation, Education for Every Child." He looked around, smiling politely at the curious onlookers who had begun to gather. Then his eyes found her. He froze. She was older now, hunched, her scarf wrapped too tightly like she had done it in the dark. Her eyes, once sharp and alert, were now cloudy with time. But her hands were still busy, still turning corn as if her whole life depended on that golden roast. He walked closer, each step slow, like he was afraid she might disappear. Mama Ruth barely looked at him. She thought he was another rich politician coming to make empty promises. She adjusted her tray, keeping her corn warm. "Do you still roast with firewood?" the man asked softly. "Or have you finally bought that freezer?" Mama Ruth paused. Her hand trembled slightly over the fire. She turned slowly, squinting. "Sorry," she said, her voice thinner than before. He knelt down. Carefully. Like he was lowering himself in front of royalty. Then he removed his sunglasses. Her mouth opened, just a little. Those eyes. That smile. That scar under his left eyebrow. She gasped. "D.A. David." He nodded, tears already gathering in the corners of his eyes. "It's me, Mama." And right there, in front of cameras, villagers, and strangers who didn't know the weight of what they were witnessing, David Ease, the tech billionaire everyone now wanted a selfie with, rested his head on Mama Ruth's lap and wept like a child. Not one person moved. Even the cameraman forgot to press record. The woman they once laughed at, pitied, and ignored was now being held like gold by the most talked-about man in Nigeria. And she just sat there, stroking his hair, whispering the same words she used to tell him every night. "You're not nobody. You're my own." The smoke from the burning corn curled into the sky, ignored by both of them. Mama Ruth had dropped the stick she used to turn the cobs, forgotten her fire, forgotten her ache. All she could do was hold his face in her palms, palms rough with years of roasting, of scrubbing pots with sand, of praying alone in the dark. She touched his cheeks, turned his head gently side to side, as if trying to convince her own eyes that this wasn't some dream woven from hunger and old memories. "Is it really you?" she asked, tears slipping from her good eye. David nodded. "It's me, Mama. Your son. I came back. I didn't forget." And then they both cried. Not the dramatic kind. The quiet, breathless kind. The kind that soaked into clothes and made bystanders sniff even though they didn't know why. The camera crew remembered themselves. Phones came out. Faces leaned from nearby kiosks. Someone shouted, "Ene Mama Ruth oh. That woman we day roast corn for here every day." Another voice joined in. "She say the boy ene ha pekin. Ene ha pekin we run years ago." David stood up, wiped his face, and faced the crowd. "She's not just a corn seller," he said, voice steady now. "This woman gave me everything when I had nothing. She gave me a home, when I had no name. She is the reason I am alive. The video went viral before the sun set. That same week, David sent engineers and architects to Obanagu. The old mud hut Mama Ruth called home was brought down gently. In its place rose a white bungalow with long windows and a small garden where she could sit in the evening and watch birds play. The kitchen had a freezer now. Not just one, but two. The tiles were smooth and white like hospital floors. Her bedroom had curtains that danced when breeze entered. Her name was stitched on the bedsheets. Everywhere she went, people greeted her with respect. Good afternoon, Mama Billionaire. Children ran to hug her legs. The women who once whispered behind her back now came bearing gifts, yams, groundnuts, wrappers she didn't ask for. She would smile politely and accept, but deep inside, something lingered. A tiny shadow. A small, quiet ache. Not pain, but something else. A feeling like a page still unturned. One evening, as the sun dips behind the hills, casting long shadows across Mama Ruth's new compound. Children chase each other across the fresh tiles while women gossip under the mango tree. Mama Ruth sits quietly on her new veranda, her eyes fixed on the sky as if trying to understand how her life turned from dust to gold. David walks over and sits beside her, holding a small wooden box. He doesn't speak at first. Then he says, "Mama, I lied to you once." Mama Ruth turns to him slowly, her wrinkled face unreadable. She says nothing, only waits. David opens the box. Inside are old black and white photographs, newspaper clippings, and a worn-out school notebook. "You told me to go and become somebody," he begins. "But the truth is, I didn't even know how to start. I didn't know where to sleep. That night I left, I lived under a bridge for weeks." He hands her a folded newspaper. On the front page is a boy's face, his face. The headline reads, "Teen Street Hawker Wins National Coding Competition." "I didn't win because I was smart," he says. "I won because I remembered how you taught me to count money at the market, how to speak to people with respect, how to work hard without complaining. I built a tech company with those same lessons." Mama Ruth stares at the paper, her hands trembling. Her lips twitch but no words come. Then David pulls out a certificate, neatly framed. He places it on her lap. It reads, "Mama Ruth, founder and first investor, Ruth Tech Innovations." She blinks. "Founder." He nods. "That 200,000 Nigerian nairas you gave me? I didn't touch it. I kept it in a fixed account in your name. You are the first investor in everything I've built." She covers her mouth with both hands. The silence is thick, but her body tells the story, shoulders shaking, chest rising and falling fast, eyes full of disbelief. But David isn't done. He claps his hands once. From the corner of the house, 3 young boys walk out, each carrying a brown paper file. They are just like I was, Mama. Orphans. Poor. Smart. I'm adopting them into the Ruth Foundation. They'll live here with you. You'll raise them. Teach them. Mama Ruth laughs, a rich, deep, hearty laugh that melts into a sob. She stretches out her arms as the boys run into them. And for the first time in years, her home is filled with voices, with joy, with family. As the sky darkens, lanterns are lit. Laughter carries into the night. And in that quiet moment, as Mama Ruth rocks gently in her new chair, surrounded by sons she never gave birth to, she says softly, "So, this is what a miracle feels like." From this story, we learn that true kindness is never wasted. Sometimes, the seeds we plant in silence and struggle blossom in places we least expect, and when they return, they come back with roots deep enough to carry us. Never underestimate the power of compassion. What you give when no one is watching may one day become the reason your name is never forgotten.
Thank you for watching Story Lovers. Please like, subscribe, and turn on notification bell so you can get notified whenever we drop new stories.